a daunting task for us to find our place in the world. And nowhere is this more true than when it comes to finding our place in the service of the Lord. Often we're confused as to what God would have us to do and how we can do what God would have us to do. We just don't know, and so we kind of hesitate and we pull back. We know as Christians that we're called to be active in our service to God and others. We just aren't always sure individually as to what we should be doing or how we should be doing it. So while this is many times what is the absolute minimum I must do in my service to the Lord, sometimes people ask that to try to appease themselves because they know they're not doing that. But I want to tell you tonight, the reality is there is an absolute minimum standard that we must do in our service to God. And while this limit or standard does not limit the heights to which our service may rise, it certainly limits the depths to which it may fall. Okay? And here is the standard that will serve as the basis for our lesson tonight, and I hope you'll take and use it however you can. But what must I do in service to the Lord? You have to do what you can with what you have where you are. And each of us are different in that, right? Because what I can do with what I have may be different than what you can do with what you have. But that's the minimum standard of service that we can offer to God and be pleasing to Him. Do everything you can with what God has blessed you with wherever you're given the opportunity to serve. Turn to Mark 14. A few days before Jesus was crucified, he was eating in the home of Simon the leper. And in Mark 14, verses 3 to 7, if I can ever get there in this Bible. All right. It says, and being in Bethany at the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at the table, a woman came, having an alabaster flask of very costly oil of spikenard. Then she broke the flask and poured it over his head. But there were some who were indigent, saying amongst themselves, why was this fragrant oil wasted? For it might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor. And they criticized her sharply. But Jesus said, let her alone. Why do you trouble me? She has done a good work for me. For you have the poor with you always, and whenever you wish you may do them good. But with me you do not always have. So while Jesus was there dining at the house of Simon the leper, Mary, it tells us, came in and anointed him with a very precious and costly spikenard oil, right? And although she was criticized by others, especially by Judas, for her actions, Jesus said wherever the gospel is preached, what she had done would be known. Now, my question is this. What has she done that was so worthy of being remembered? And I think that we have an answer to that question in verse 8. For it says she has done what she could. She has come beforehand to anoint my body for burial. She did what she could with what she had where she was. And that's what God expects of each and every one of us. What we're talking about in essence here is the subject of stewardship. What are we doing with the time and the talents and the opportunity that God has placed in our care? The term steward derives from a compound Greek word that signifies, it means a house arranger. So it's employed 10 times in the New Testament and basically has to do with one who's been entrusted with the responsibility of managing a household. It belongs to another, but this person has come along to manage the household, right? So it's used of church leaders, the elders. It's used of uh, teachers of the word, of Christians generally. So it doesn't leave anybody out, does it? You know, it's been said that there are basically three philosophies regarding the ownership of property, right? Communism alleges that the state is to own and control all things. And they pass them out to people. They give them little pieces here and there. Capitalism contends that every man owns whatever he can accumulate. So if you accumulate $10 an hour or $10 million an hour, whatever you can afford with that, that's what you can have. The ideal, though, is Christianity, and that of stewardship. And that being that God possesses the entire world and everything within it, and thus men are responsible to him for how we use them. It says in Psalm 50, verses 10 to 12, for every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. I know all the birds of the mountains, and the wild beasts of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine, and the fullness thereof. The Bible says all belongs to God. He just lets us use some of that as a house arranger, as stewards. And we must give an account for how we use those things. While there are a number of standards we could appeal to in order to justify what we do and don't do in service of the Lord, this is, I believe, one standard we cannot ignore. God expects us to do what we can with what we have where we are. What we have, what we can, what we have, we're here in Jackson, Cape Girardeau. This is our evangelism field. We can do great things here, and the Lord can bless us. But we have to do what we can with what we have. We can't ever get to the place where we tell ourselves that I just don't have very much to give, so I'm not going to give anything. We have to stop thinking poorly of ourselves and realize that whatever I can do for the Lord is appreciated. You're doing what you can with what you have. Now, you need to grow in that. You need to develop in that. You need to get more experience with that. So did I. When I started preaching, my first lesson was just a bunch of words on a piece of paper. They weren't that good either. But I had people come up and thank me and say you did a good job because they wanted to encourage a young preacher to keep going. And I appreciated that. So I kept going. I grew. I studied. I learned. I went to school. I did what I had to do or what I could do with what I had wherever I was. So I want to talk to you about this principle tonight in a little bit more detail, just the next 5-10 minutes. But the principle expressed, we have two aspects to consider this principle. Number one, God expects each of us to do that which we can do. Okay? Now, that's going to leave some leeway for us to get out there and discover what we can do, and we may try to do things that we realize we can't. Is that a reason to not do anything? No. You may fail at some things. We all fail at some things. But what does that mean? It means we have to find out what we're good at. And when we do, we can serve the Lord. The commandments of God are not a heavier burden than we can bear, says John in 1 John 5:3. The commandments of God are not too difficult or time-consuming, and thus we simply cannot do any less than that which God has commanded us to do in His Word. Would anybody disagree with that? We can't. So how do we determine exactly what it is that we can do in the service of God? Well, there are a couple of principles involved in determining what we can do. And determining one's responsibilities and capabilities and doing what we can do. And that's really what it's about, right? If we have the opportunity and we have the ability to meet a need, to solve a problem, what does God expect us to do? Use that opportunity and those means to solve the problem. Use the opportunity and the means to solve the problem. That is doing what we can with what we have where we are. So without opportunity and without ability, there is no responsibility. I can't do what I don't have the ability or the opportunity to do. Thus, it's only if we're doing all that we have the opportunity and ability to do in God's service that it can be truly said of us that He has done that which He could do. There's some important principles here as well. As we see in the parable of the talents, not all people have the same opportunities nor the same abilities, right? We know that. One talent man, 2 talent man, 5 talent man, they have different abilities, different opportunities, different things that they can do in serving the Lord. But something else we notice, though, is that all have some opportunities and all have some abilities. Everybody had that, right? Thus, faithfulness was marked not by what we cannot do, but by our doing what we could with what we had, using our opportunities and abilities. You're not going to be judged by God for not doing that which you did not have the abilities or opportunities to do. But God is going to hold us all accountable for wasting the abilities, wasting the opportunities that He puts in our path to be of service to Him. So we have to, what do we have to do? Well, we have to determine what we're good at. We have to determine what we have the ability to do. And then we have to be wise and look for those opportunities that God grants us. Because you can have all the abilities in the world, but if you don't have any opportunities, you don't have a chance to apply those abilities. But when we're wise and we're looking, you will notice that God will put more opportunities in your path than you ever thought imaginable. We just have to look. Let us always remember that any effort that's less than our best is not acceptable to God. Never really has been, really. Did we know that? God commanded only that which is best, or only the best is acceptable in worship to Him. He condemns the offering of that which is less than best, and He will not accept it. So here's a lesson on that. God doesn't demand more than we're capable of doing, but He has always demanded that we give Him the very best we have. Number 2, the second principle involved in this, God rewards those who do what they can with what they have. God will bless those who faithfully serve Him. This is a principle seen throughout the entirety of the biblical text. Certainly we understand that God will bless eternally those who do what they can with what they have where they are. But in this point, I want to focus on how God can reward our faithfulness in this life as well. When we have matured to the point that we're taking advantage of every opportunity and using every ability God has blessed us with, then we can take it easy and say we have arrived, right? No. No, we don't get to do that. What happens at this point actually is quite amazing, and that is that God just grants us a bigger cup. He said, you've proven yourself so far. I'm going to give you more service. I'm going to give you more. And this is not to be seen as a burden, as it is in reality in this life. God's rewarding us for our faithfulness. The way we let God know what we would do if we were blessed with much is by what we're doing with what we already have. You know, sometimes we say, well, I want to serve God. I want to do this, 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 this. That's great. What are you doing right now, though, to serve God? Because that's what God's looking at. He wants to know how you're going to serve Him using what you have. And the point is pretty obvious. Those who love God will use what they have to serve Him right now. That means whatever money they have now, whatever time they have now, whatever resource they have now, whatever talent they have now, will be used to serve God. Because that's what God expects of us, isn't it? Turn to 2 Kings chapter 5. We're going to close here. 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 9 to 14. The Bible says, then Naaman went with his horses and chariot, and he stood at the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean. But Naaman became furious and went away and said, indeed I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call me in the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hand over this place and heal this leprosy. Are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. And his servants came near and spoke to him and said, my father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? So he went down and dipped in 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. God expects each of us to do that which we can do. Naaman did not have the ability to effect his own cleansing. But he could go dip in the Jordan 7 times. That's what the man of God told him to do. Only question now is he going to do that? But what we also see from this passage is that God rewards those who do what they can with what we have. Because Naaman didn't have access to the rivers of Damascus and thus could not go and dip in them right away. But he did have access to the Jordan in which he was told to dip. Thus, eventually, after service came to him, he went and did what he was told to do and where he was told to do it, and he was cleansed. When we do what we can with what we have, God will provide the reward in this life and in the life to come. So the only question I guess I have left to ask you tonight is, are you doing all that you can with whatever you have, wherever you are? We're all over the place, I know. We have jobs all over the place. We have kids, we have families, we have whatever. But even in those places, that's an opportunity to serve God. If we will have our eyes opened to what He's doing in our lives. And so tonight I ask, is there anyone here who knows that you have fallen below this standard and you know you're not doing the very best you can with what you have where you are? I understand that. I know we're going to fail sometimes. We're going to fall short. We're going to do that which we're not pleased with. We know God isn't. But I want to encourage you tonight, because you can come down here and you can let your brothers know. And we'll pray for you and God will forgive you. If you have need of doing this tonight, we encourage you to come while we stand and sing.